Iran says the matter can be deemed concluded. You believe that retaliation by Israel is likely. What form do you think it will take?
Well, the most likely tactics that Israel would try to utilize are to get them back onto their basically their April 12th strategy, which is covert escalation. The Israelis are looking for ways where they can get their shadow war back into the shadows with greater intensity. So from a tactical consideration, they need to decide which way that they could strike back at Iran that allows them to get back on that track, because that's their major imperative. They don't want an overt conflict with Iran. They don't want another round of Iranian drones and missiles heading towards Israel, in spite of how effective Israel's air defenses and its regional allies' air defenses were. It can't go into that dynamic in an open-ended conflict the way that we're seeing with, say, the United States and the Houthis. So how do they do that? That depends on which considerations that they decide to utilize, what kind of weapons platforms, the geography, all of that very much matters. But it also creates a lot of ambiguity as to when Israel will strike, how hard, and with what.
So, Ryan, I mean, if we follow your line of thinking here, it sounds as though we're not talking about direct Israeli missile strikes into Iranian territory, more likely strikes on proxies in third countries, or are you talking about something even more covert, like an operation to take out Iran's nuclear facilities, or some of it?
So covert escalation within Iran would still be an escalation, but it would be less risky. It would have some strategic ambiguity around it. So that certainly is an option that I have no doubt the War Cabinet in Israel has discussed and is still trying to figure out if that's their best option going forward. The problem with that is that a covert operation still has that strategic ambiguity, that fog of war surrounding it, where Israel's deterrence isn't necessarily reestablished. The Iranians can claim that it was an accident. The Israelis will claim that they weren't involved at all. So that doesn't reestablish deterrence in the open sense that Israel wants. On the other hand, striking proxies in places like Syria or Iraq or in Lebanon, that can hit those proxies hard, and they can increase the scope and scale of those airstrikes. And of course, they've been carrying out a shadow war in Syria almost for a decade at this point. But that won't necessarily send the signal to Iran that launching attacks on Israel itself carries its own risks. So Israel has to decide whether or not attacking Iran itself in the open will necessarily generate yet another round of attacks from Iran. That I don't know if they have the answer to that, but right now they certainly are seriously considering direct strikes on Iran, because that is the clearest path back to deterrence.
Ryan, on the Iranian side, there's been some chatter that one of the things they could do is a soft blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. How likely do you think that is?
I think we are going to see the Iranians try to rattle the global economy increasingly in response to whatever Israel does. We obviously saw them grab a container ship right before their attacks on Israel itself. That sort of harassment and behavior is likely to continue in some fashion. What scale of it is probably going to be gauged by how hard Israel goes after Iran. So direct strikes on Iran itself, even if those are going after just some of the launcher sites within Western Iran, where some of these missiles and drones came from, that could still generate a significant Iranian, especially their special forces response on some of the naval traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz. Not designed to shut down the whole strait, as you alluded to, this idea of a soft blockade, but to rattle markets just enough that the United States puts diplomatic pressure on Israel to de-escalate and refrain from further action. I think that that's probably one of our most significant and most likely steps that we will see after the Israeli response has unfolded.